I'm Hannah Moore, CFP, a practicing financial planner and educator. I'm on a mission to change the way people think and talk about money. Let's get started. Why do people lose sudden wealth? Now, we see this in a lot of different places, and there's certainly lots of stories that float around on this. So this idea of sudden wealth can be from a lot of different places. It can be from lottery winners to professional athletes to people who get inheritances, all the way down to, it could be a bonus that you get at work. Why is it that these sudden influxes and oftentimes large influxes are really hard to keep, to have work for you? I think there's a lot of reasons for why this happens. Now, I think I want to put one big caveat on this, is that this is not true for everyone. And this certainly doesn't have to be your story. That there are a lot of people who get these sudden windfall events and that manage it very, very well. So know that as we're talking about this, and we know that a lot of people struggle with this, that doesn't mean that everyone struggles with it, nor does it mean that you're going to be the one to struggle with it. But I want to talk about some of the reasons why that's so difficult and some of the things that you can do to protect yourself, right? Okay, so let's talk about why this happens. Now, the first reason is that oftentimes people are getting, who get a large sum of money, inheritances, for example, they haven't ever dealt with money of that scale. And so they have no context. They have no framework for how to think about money in that way. So one of my favorite ways of thinking about this is I'll ask people oftentimes, how does a millionaire live? And I'm going to get a wide range of answers, right? I'm going to get a very, very wide range of answers. Now, I work with a lot of millionaire clients, and I'll tell you that it is possible that nobody knows that they're millionaires, that it is not that they're living this luxurious lifestyle. It's not that they're living and doing the fanciest things. It's really that they know the rhythms of what they have to do. Now, what's interesting is when we get people who say, oh my gosh, if I was a millionaire, I would be able to, buy this house, buy this car, do this or do that. And it is shocking how quickly the money can go. And not just the money goes on big ticket items, but the cost to maintain those items. And so this idea of what does it actually, what does a millionaire actually look like? I think there's this huge misconception in our society about what does that actually mean? What is a lifestyle of a millionaire? Because I think sometimes you look at those lifestyles of millionaires and you'd be shocked at what that looks like. And even in that scenario of how much money you can actually pull off of $1 million to make that sustainable through your lifetime, it's not as much as some people may think. And so one of the big reasons why people lose these sudden windfalls is they don't have context. Now you think about it. If you have been saving, for years and years and years to get to the point where you have $1 million, where you're a millionaire, you have an idea of what is the lifestyle that's needed in order to build it and maintain it. You've been practicing, you've been exercising those muscles, if you were. You have that routine, those rhythms down. Somebody who just inherits money or gets money from whatever form, they're not used to that. They don't have a framework or the context in order to make financial decisions from that perspective. And so it can be a huge, huge disadvantage. So one of the ways that we see people protect themselves or protect heirs from this, one of the most common is when I see families who are doing estate planning for minor children, right? So if you have minor children, oftentimes you're setting up a trust for your kids. So if you have any life insurance, so usually if it's a married couple, it will go to one spouse, and then after one spouse, it oftentimes goes to the kids and kid or kids or however you structure it. And part of that is, minors can't be, they can't be able to manage their own money. We don't want a 15-year-old trying to manage, all this life insurance proceeds if both their parents pass away. And so oftentimes families will put that money into trust, or it'll be a guardianship situation. If it's with the state, it's a whole other conversation. But they'll put in money into a trust. And now in this trust, there's several things that need to be decided. And one of the big things that needs to be decided is, when does the child get this money? And so one of the most common things that I'll see that parents will give out a third of the money at a certain age, a third of the money at another age, and a third of money at a later age, with knowing that it's very likely that their student or their child won't necessarily know how to handle that money. And it gives a child an opportunity to get some money to kind of learn some lessons, right? Learn what it's like. And perhaps they do wonderful with it. I have some clients who've inherited money in their early 20s who've done extraordinarily well with it. So this is not a one size fits all, but it gives them the opportunity to kind of mess up, make some mistakes, see what this looks like, get used to what it's like to be managing that money. Oftentimes, especially with younger clients, there's an immense amount of pressure that they feel on this. They don't want to screw it up, but let them do that, and then they can get these other kind of tranches of money as well. So it's one of the ways that we've seen families kind of protect their heirs. Again, we hope nobody dies prematurely, but that's one thing that we have seen from that perspective. Now, another thing when we think about these sudden bursts of wealth, right? How do you protect yourself? So if that was to happen to you, how do you think through that? Oftentimes you see the advice of don't tell anybody about it, which can be, is a fair point. But one of the things, so obviously get yourself a financial advisor, an attorney, especially if it's a large amount of money, run projections, be able to see the consequences of your decision. Not even the consequences. That sounds like too harsh of a word, but just see the impact of your decision. See the impact of, okay, if we buy this house, what are the property taxes on it? What is going to be the maintenance, the upkeep? How is that going to increase my standard of living over the rest of my life? Because those are the things that you need to be factoring into like your financial plan. And so it's incredibly important that you're talking to somebody to help you put those decisions into context of not just seeing how it's going to be impacting tomorrow, and not just saying, can I afford the price of this house? I'm using that as an example, but how am I going to be able to afford the upkeep over time, right? You want that larger context. And that's usually where a really good financial planner is going to come into play. Okay, off of that side note. But one of the things when we look at when somebody gets sudden wealth, one of the things we look at is, you guys have heard, if you've listened to any of this podcast before, I'm a big believer in the values and understanding your values and getting really, really clear about what those look like. And so, yes, it's starting out with those values. It's saying, here's what's important to me. Here are the core values that are central to me. And the next step is saying, okay, what am I willing to do and what am I not willing to do? Because depending on what your windfall is, people are going to have different expectations of you. Is your family going to expect money? Are your siblings going to expect money? Your kids? What is that going to look like? But not just what are their expectations of you. We can set that aside, but focus on what is it that you would be willing to give? What are going to be your constraints, right? What are going to be your, I don't say non-negotiables, but what are going to be your things, your boundaries that you're going to say, like, here's what I will do, here's what I won't do. Being able to think through those in a neutral environment when it's not, when things aren't getting thrown around, it can be really, really powerful. I've even worked with clients where we've done some of these exercises together. We'll role play with them and let them kind of practice saying no to some people who they don't really want to say no to, but helping redirect that of saying, here's what I am willing to do versus not willing to do. But getting really, really clear on that, I think, is one of the most important pieces when we're looking at these sudden wealth events. We want to make sure that you're taken care of first. And then we look at, okay, who do you feel financially responsible for? Who are those people? And then once we know those people, what are you willing to do and what aren't you willing to do? And making sure that you just have a really strong game plan going into this, because it's these sudden bursts of wealth can be a great thing to have. It can really enhance your life, but it can also be challenging. It can also be difficult. As we've seen so many of the stats out there that say that, a lot of people who get these sudden wealth lose it over time. But getting clear on what are you willing to do and not willing to do, and then understanding that within that context of that larger financial plan, of understanding like what are the actual impacts that your financial plan has on various scenarios, is really, really powerful. So even if you're not having a sudden influx of money or anything like that. It's a really good exercise to be doing anyways, just to really get a good sense and grounding of what is it? Like, where are you at? Where are you at financially? Because getting that clarity is so important. No matter if you're having this windfall or if you are just like the rest of us, working your job and making things keep moving with your family. Thanks for listening to this episode of Everyday Money with Hannah Moore. If you like what you heard, subscribe and check out livewealthynow.com. We have a lot more resources to help you live wealthy now.